Hey y'all, I am back with another installment of my Demonic and Depraved series. This is the rapper edition, and I'm starting off with Big Lurch. He was a little known rapper that was part of the horrorcore genre of rap music. So let me just play a little bit of this video from Celebrity Underrated. It's a really good channel about the deaths of celebrities and other tragic circumstances that have befallen them. And then we'll get into his chart.
It was the same old problems with the gang members, but this time his life was being threatened and all kinds of stuff. Now stuck in a contract and stressed out. That's when Big Lurch started hustling again, but this time he didn't go back to Texas. He stayed in Cali. He started hustling in San Francisco, and he had dope houses and everything. He was running with a gang. But see, his gang, he was hanging out with friends who smoked Sherm, though, AKA, y'all might know as the drug PCP or angel dust. Now, what is PCP, right? PCP is a hallucinogenic drug that can alter the user's reality, mood, and thought patterns. It can be sniffed, swallowed, or injected. It can also be smoked if a cigarette is dipped into or sprayed by liquid PCP, and it can make people feel invincible, engage in violent behavior, or do something to hurt themselves. Now that y'all know what angel dust is, because see, at the time, the only drug Big Lurch did was smoke weed. He didn't even drink alcohol. And in order for him just to fit in with his gang, he did PCP when he was with his boys one night. They was having a party at their dope house. And they just kept giving it to him and giving him more and more of it. Next thing you know, Big Lurch was in prison for the rest of his life. Because on April 10th, 2002, Big Lurch was charged with murder and aggravated mayhem after killing his 21-year-old roommate's girlfriend, Tanisha Sace, in the apartment they all shared together. Now, the story goes on that April 10th, 2002, in the afternoon. Now, according to reports, this is what they say. They say Big Lurch went to the apartment that he shared with his roommate and his girlfriend, Tanisha, who was a beautiful, inspiring model who went by the nickname Pocahontas. And Tanisha's two kids was at school at the time, and her boyfriend wasn't there either. So she was there all by herself at the apartment. Now, they say Big Lurch, still high off PCP, he knocked on the door, and before she knew it, he pushed his way into the apartment, knocking her down. And that's when she started screaming, and he beat her until she was quiet. And then he started looking for the PCP, but couldn't find it. And that's when they say he grabbed a knife from the kitchen and stabbed her repeatedly in the chest. Then he sliced open her chest, grabbed her right lung, snatched it out with the other organs, and began to eat it. Wow. Now, after that, he then took all of his clothes off, ran down the street, and that's when Tanisha's friend, Elisa, saw him naked and covered in blood, standing in the street, staring and yelling at the sky. And she called the police. Now, when the police got there, they say Big Lurch growled at them like a dog, and they arrested him. After they arrested him, her friend Elisa ran into the apartment to make sure Tanisha was all right, and broke down when she seen the condition of her. And she was barely recognizable, she said, because her chest had been ripped open and she was missing her right lung, and a 3-inch knife blade had been broken off near her left shoulder. Now, when the coroner examined Tanisha's body, she had multiple stab wounds, her neck and jaw were broken, teeth marks were found on her face, and she had a fractured eye socket. But check this out, though. They also say they found a large amount of PCP in her system, but she didn't do no drugs. She didn't even do drugs. And according to the medical examiner, she had so much PCP in her system that somebody must have poured it down her throat. And it ain't no way that she could have smoked that much PCP. But see, then they examined Big Lurch after they arrested him, and they found blood and pieces of human flesh inside of his stomach that matched Tanisha. Now, here's the crazy part. Big Lurch said when he came to and sobered up and the PCP finally wore off, he didn't even know that he had been in jail for over 2 weeks. and don't remember anything. He said the only thing he remembered was smoking PCP and thinking that the world was ending and that he had to find and kill the devil. He was so out of it, couldn't find out. He done stood in front of the judge and had been arraigned and everything. And that's when he found out that the person that he was beefing with at the record label, the owner, Milton Grimes, took on the case as his lawyer. And Big Lurch didn't have a problem with that. He's like, okay, because this is a famous lawyer that helped Rodney King, so he trusted him. Now,
all right, I'm going to stop right there. And you got the gist of the story. So it's a very strange, bizarre, and depraved story. And in my opinion, it's a story about demonic possession brought on by drug use, in this case, PCP. But I'm also wondering if he was also prescribed some antipsychotics or antidepressants at some point before this situation occurred, because he was involved in a bad car accident and he ended up breaking his neck. And when you're involved in a traumatic accident like that, a lot of times doctors will prescribe you some type of antidepressant or antipsychotic or some mood disorder drug in order to help you through it. So I'm wondering if it was a combination of a prescribed drug and the PCP, which would have definitely could create a situation like that if the person just suddenly stops taking the prescribed drug, or they're not taking it in the way that they should. Or he could have been taking a prescribed street drug as well, maybe Xanax in addition to the PCP. But PCP alone can make somebody do some crazy and depraved things, but to the point where they're actually eating human flesh, to me, that could be more so a combination of drugs, one of them being a prescribed drug, because there's a lot of evidence about how certain prescribed drugs, namely SSRIs, which are antidepressants, antipsychotics, that if not taken properly or if they stop abruptly, could result in psychosis. So let me just get into his chart. So again, this is Big Lurch, little known rapper, and he was part of the horrorcore genre of rap music, which is basically these very dark lyrics, rapping about murder, killing, torture, and things like that. So here's his chart. He was born September 15th, 1976, and he has his sun in Virgo, but it's unaspected, which is potentially problematic. He has a Libra stellium. He has his North Node in Scorpio conjoined to Uranus, South Node in Taurus conjoined to Chiron, Moon in Gemini. Now, the moon represents women and Gemini represents the lungs. So the moon in Gemini, that's a woman's lungs. And remember, in the video, it said that he tore open the woman's chest and started eating her lungs. So that moon in Gemini is representing that. His numerology. So his birth number is 15, which can be very fortunate because it brings great potential to make a lot of money. Also, that represents his love for music and involvement in the music industry. Can make him very personable, charming, and engaging. He could love fashion and the arts. Benefits through connections and relationships. However, there's a dark side to the 15 because manipulation is a major theme. So 15s are prone to be manipulative, or if they're not, they can attract manipulative people into their life, especially if they have some connection to the number 4 or 8 or both. Now, Big Lurch has his Uranus at the 4th degree of Scorpio, his sun at the 22nd degree of Virgo, that breaks down to 4. So with him having that 4 energy in his chart, he's very much prone to be manipulated by others. And with 15, a person could even resort to using black magic as a means to an end. And one of the darkest forms of black magic is sacrifice. And if you know about how this world really works, people that are very successful, like in the music industry, Hollywood, they may have a sacrifice, or there may be a sacrifice that helps them to get ahead. Now, I'm not saying that this was the case in Big Lurch's life where this was a sacrifice to make him get ahead, but I feel like it was a sacrifice for someone else to get ahead, or for someone else to be even more successful than what they already are. perhaps. His life path number is 11, that breaks down to 2. 11 can produce internal and external conflicts, especially with women, but also home, family, race, and culture. Also with 11, a person could have an alter ego, and there is often interference from third parties. And the interference from third parties could be his friend, also could be the record company and the gang as well. His sun at the 22nd degree of Virgo is unaspected, which basically means that he could end up in a situation where he has to be very submissive to someone or to a group of people, especially because we're talking about the 22nd degree. That 22nd degree is about control or be controlled. And with Virgo, that could be in work situations. So him being under someone's control is a major theme of that sun at the 22nd degree of Virgo, especially with it being unaspected. The 22nd degree is about submission and caution. So it can result in being placed in positions of submission, and it brings the need to exercise caution in all that you do. The submissive theme is augmented with Virgo and with it being unaspected. The 22nd degree can bring sudden and unexpected changes. Also, it's a degree of sudden death, and it's basically about kill or be killed. It can bring forth freak accidents and freak events. Friends or group affiliations could contribute to one's problems and their downfall with the 22nd degree. Now his sun is running parallel to the fixed star Alrisha, and this produces a unifying influence with groups. So the group theme is reinforced with this star attached to his sun. Now his moon is in Gemini. It could be at the 11th degree, and I wouldn't be surprised if it is. And it's opposing Neptune and Sagittarius. This is one of the more problematic aspects of his chart. So this is representative of him getting caught up in the rap industry. It's a dark corridor of the music industry being represented by Neptune, being highly impressionable. Now his moon in Gemini is good for being a rapper. He also has Jupiter in Gemini, which is good for being a rapper as well. But when you have moon opposition Neptune and Sagittarius, you could be under someone's control. Like you could be a slave to someone. You may not be using your free mind, or you may not have freedom of mindset. So being highly impressionable, being prone to delusions and hallucinations, and in his case, brought on by PCP and other drugs, losing his mind when intoxicated, having schizophrenic symptoms, him being in the streets, screaming, looking up at the sky, just being out of it. Like this opposition can basically take him out of consciousness. Like he could basically lose consciousness and do some crazy shit. Alcohol or certain drugs make him more wide open to suggestion. So he didn't drink, but he did smoke weed. The weed's not really going to do anything to make him really get out of like his body or out of consciousness, but he was taking PCP, and that can. Drugs. So he was prescribed morphine when he got into a bad car accident. And then his morphine ran out, which caused him to start using PCP, because PCP acts as a numbing agent, because it was said that he was in a lot of pain. He had broken his neck in a car accident. And I wouldn't be surprised if a doctor prescribes him an SSRI, antipsychotic or antidepressant. Those SSRIs can be very dangerous if they're not taken properly. Lapses in memory. So the moon rules memory. And when you have moon opposition Neptune, you could experience lapses in memory. So remember, he couldn't remember what he did when he got locked up. This could be long-term hospitalization. And in his case, it was due to a car accident. Being trapped, locked down in prison. He's doing a life sentence in prison right now. Being seen by neighbors and also the victim's friend. He was covered in blood. And that makes me think that his Neptune could be in the first house, because that first house deals with the body, and Neptune's in Sagittarius. Sagittarius rules the blood. So him being covered in blood, that could very well be Neptune in the first house. I wouldn't be surprised if he was a Scorpio rising, 29th degree in particular, with Sagittarius intercepted in that first house. Here's pictures of him after he got locked up. Look like he still got some blood stains on his body. And if you look at this picture to the left, you could clearly see he's out of it. So that Libra stellium consists of Venus, Mars, and Pluto. And with this, he's easily influenced by others, being part of a rap group, musical collaborations, being overpowered by others, especially with Mars conjunct Pluto, being forced to play a dark character in music, operating under duress, assuming a false identity, like playing this like morbid, gruesome character when that probably wasn't who he really was, potential to commit crimes, especially robbery, assault, and murder, prone to bouts of psychosis brought on by external factors. And I'm saying external factors because of the Libra influence. So again, I wonder if a doctor had prescribed him some type of antidepressant or antipsychotic after that accident, and the PCP contributing to that just made him lose his damn mind. Now, again, PCP alone can make you lose your damn mind, but with this particular crime, it really makes you wonder, was it just PCP? Easily susceptible to demonic influences and possession, especially with that Mars conjunct Pluto. This is a murder aspect, especially with Mars conjunct Pluto. Could have open enemies, and he did because he was involved in that gang life. He was a blood. So in the beginning of that video clip, said his life was being threatened by a gang. Legal problems, his trial attorneys. Venus and Mars are forming a sesqui-square with Jupiter and Gemini, being stuck in a bad recording contract, being wide open to suggestion by others. Now, that Jupiter and Gemini produces a mind that is wide open. So if you have Jupiter and Gemini, you got to be careful what you feed your mind. And it can cause you to believe basically anything if you don't have, that strong mindset or independence of mindset. Could act out, do things at the behest of other suggestions. When I see this sesqui-square, this makes me think he was the type of person where people could dare him to do something and he would do it. Would do something crazy or depraved on a dare or promise to garner approval. Could pertain to issues with his large size. So he was 6'7". So he was abnormally tall. And if he ain't playing basketball, of course, people going to be looking at him like, even his friends are the ones who call him Big Lurch. And Lurch is the character from the Addams family. He was the butler. And he was this, monstrous kind of looking kind of guy. Got into a bad car accident with Jupiter being in Gemini. That's representing the car. It could have been like a big truck or whatever. Not like a tractor trailer because this was a drunk driver situation, but it could have been like a pickup truck or an SUV or whatever. Got into a bad car accident and suffered a broken neck. That's Mars and Pluto conjoined Venus. He could have gotten the idea about eating the lungs from a song or a book, video, etc. Because remember, he's very impressionable. Songs were used against him in court. Poor legal representation. Freedom of mindset is very limited or non-existent. Psychosis in particular, when the conjunction between Mars and Pluto is taken into account. So a person that has Mars conjunct Pluto, they could experience bouts of psychosis from time to time, or maybe just one bout in their lifetime. So with that, psychosis, in my opinion, is basically demonic possession, because like I always say, when it comes to your mind, if you're not behind the wheel, who is? Something else takes over. You have to ask yourself why, when people are psychotic, they tend to do bad things. Well, it's the demon making them do bad things through psychosis. So according to NAMI.org, psychosis is characterized as disruptions to a person's thoughts and perceptions that make it difficult for them to recognize what is real and what isn't. These disruptions are often experienced as seeing, hearing, and believing things that aren't real or having strange, persistent thoughts, behaviors, and emotions. While everyone's experience is different, most people say psychosis is frightening and confusing. And again, PCP could definitely bring about psychosis. But the type of psychosis he was experiencing, again, I wouldn't be surprised if it was a combination of PCP and a prescribed antipsychotic or antidepressant. This is the victim, Tynesha Yesayas. She was only 21 at the time that she was murdered, and she was an acquaintance of Big Lurch. That's very much that Uranus conjoined to the North Node. And she was found dead by her friend. Her chest had been torn open and a 3-inch blade was found broken off in her shoulder blade. Tooth marks were found on her face and on her lungs, which had been torn from her chest. And remember, again, Big Lurch has that moon in Gemini. Gemini rules the lungs. It also rules the shoulders. So the fact that she had the knife in her shoulder blade as well, and the moon representing the chest, but it also represents a woman. His Chiron being conjoined to the South Node in Taurus, that could produce money problems, which he experienced. Wounds upon his self-esteem, and it could deal with the way he looks. Being abnormal, again, he was abnormally large, very tall. A special or unusual genre of music, and in this case, it was the horrorcore rap genre. Broken neck. So Taurus rules the neck, and Chiron can manifest as a wound to the neck when it's conjoined to the Taurus South Node, and that represents that broken neck. Possession. Taurus is the sign of possession. And with possession, you have to take it literally in terms of a person basically having hold on you or having control over you. And it's the same with demons. So demonic possession, with possession, you're going to look for Taurus and Scorpio. The opposing signs both come into play when it comes to demonic possession. So possession through some kind of artificial or synthetic substance. The artificial and synthetic part, that's the Chiron influence. Could be from a doctor, PCP, or a combination of both. Eating something weird, strange, or unconventional. So Chiron represents that which is weird, strange, unconventional. Taurus is the food. His Uranus was conjoined to the North Node in Scorpio. So this represents a friend, acquaintance, or associate being involved in his crime. I'm suspecting that he didn't act alone in this. He may not have acted alone. Smoked PCP with a friend the night prior. Now this friend was the victim's boyfriend. His name is Thomas Moore, and he testified that he and Singleton, which is Big Lurch's last name, spent the evening prior to the murder smoking PCP. It later came out that Moore was abusing Tynesha and she was about to leave him. So I wonder if it was his friend's idea to kill Tynesha and Big Lurch either helped, or maybe Big Lurch was the one who carried it out. Death, murder of an acquaintance. That's what Uranus conjoined to the North Node in Scorpio can represent. Being affiliated with a dark criminal or evil group. Being drawn to the dark side of life. Most Scorpio North Nodes are going to experience the dark side of life in some way, shape, or form. Dark, prurient interests, perversions with the Uranus influence. Doing something shocking and appalling in terms of a crime. A murder that is shocking and appalling. His tall and imposing stature, because Uranus can produce height, like tallness, can make one very tall. Chiron in the South Node opposing Uranus and the North Node. Dark corridor of hardcore music. I always liken oppositions to dark hallways or dark corridors, and you could feel like you're trapped in that hallway or corridor, and it often takes somebody to bring you up out of it. So in this case, this is the dark corridor of horrorcore music. Demonic influences / possession. The erosion of values and standards as a result of him being affiliated with that dark group. Being pressured by a group to actually commit depraved crimes that he raps about. Now, the victim's mother came out and later said that this is what was going on. The murder of the acquaintance as a result of possession, being made to expel contents that he ate. So here he is, a picture of him while he's in prison. He still look crazy as shit. I'm thinking that he probably had some mental health disorders ever since he was a child. He might have been put on medication as a child. There's not much information out there about his early life and his background and all that, but I wouldn't be surprised if he was already working with some mental health issues, especially with Moon opposition Neptune. His Saturn and Leo squaring the Taurus South Node. This can deal with a need for fame and stardom, causes him to compromise his values. Because when you got Saturn and Leo, some people that have Saturn and Leo could have such a strong need for fame, attention, and stardom, and they're liable to do a lot to get there. And with his square in the Taurus South Node, his values could be compromised in the process. Being controlled by entertainment execs in order to get money. Gives up free will for the sake of getting money. Leo is representing free will. Taurus is money. Probably was being exploited and didn't earn much money. Saturn is the exploitation. Possession triggers the constraint of his free will. Again, remember, Taurus rules possession. And just think about, if you were to get into a relationship with a possessive person. Being possessive is basically where you're trying to restrict a person's free will to a certain extent. So the same happens with demonic possession. That demon is restricting the person's free will. They're not acting of their own volition. Having neck constricted in a brace after it was broken, problems with the spine due to a broken neck. So here's his chart again. Here's that Chiron conjoined to the South Node, opposing Uranus and the North Node. These oppositions are the underlying reason why all of this went down. Here's a picture of his album cover. As you can see, looks very dark. He looks imposing, has that skull on the platter, really getting into that horrorcore, that dark type of rap. So his Mercury in Libra was in quincunx with his Taurus South Node. This can produce self-esteem issues due to comparing himself to others. When he gets approval from others, he feels good. When he gets disapproval from others, his self-esteem goes down the toilet. Problems with recording contract, especially in terms of money, and trying to wrangle himself out of that contract. So in the video, it started off saying he was stuck in that contract. I believe I played that part. Possession results in a lack of control over his mind, and it makes it easy for someone to influence his mind and say, yo, you need to go do this. Saturn and Leo squaring Scorpio North Node, becoming infamous for a crime he committed, lacking free will due to demonic influence via people and PCP, compulsions resulting in a lack of control. Entertainment execs aren't satisfied with his dark behaviors. They want more for the sake of fame. Now, the transits that he was experiencing on the day that he committed this murder. So the inner will is his natal chart. The outer will is the transits. So the transiting North Node was in Gemini, and it was forming a sesqui-square with his Uranus and North Node in Scorpio. And this sesqui-square, let me just show you what it does. So here's the Gemini North Node. So it's creating this rectangle in his chart because the North Node's making a sesqui-square with his Uranus, or no, his North Node, and then it's making a semi-square with his South Node. The transiting South Node is making a sesqui-square with his South Node and making a semi-square with his North Node. So that right there is creating this type of predicament involving the themes of these signs involved. And remember, the North Node in Gemini, Gemini rules the lungs. So that's that. So with this transit, this is representing the friend or acquaintance is in predicament or dire straits. In this case, it was his victim, the acquaintance, that was the girlfriend of his friend. Being pressured to be depraved and commit criminal acts to be a gangster rapper or the horrorcore rapper, a situation out of the ordinary, being out of sorts, doing the unexpected, a decrease in your level of independence, being less at liberty, enforced separation. Transiting Saturn was conjoined to his moon. And this is reinforces my belief that his moon is at the 11th degree of Gemini, because on the day that he committed the murders, transiting Saturn was at the 11th degree of Gemini. Now, this can produce a problem with the breast, chest, lungs, stomach, or womb. Now, in this case, it was the chest, lungs, and stomach. So he tore open the girl's chest, ate her lungs, and then his stomach had to be expelled, and they were examining the contents and all that. Having low or flat affect, where you're not really displaying emotions, you're just flat. Also, he could have been going through serious depression. Depression can be a contributing factor for psychosis. A need to divulge personal details about yourself, and that's basically when he gets apprehended by the police and he has to, tell his story or whatever. Being taken out of your comfort zone, he definitely was. Hidden or private information is made public, media attention, being under public scrutiny, being monitored, a run-in with the law, a problem with your mother. In this case, this was the victim's mother's statement, and that would be that Gemini influence, wife or another woman. And some of these bullet points are taken from my book on transits. That's why it's more generalized. Examining the contents of his stomach. Blame is directed at a woman or women in general. And what's interesting about this, actually, I think it's on the next slide, but this can also be where he was under mind control with Saturn being on that moon in Gemini, especially with the 11th degree. Now, you say his mother, Carolyn Stinson, filed a wrongful death lawsuit against Black Market Records, Singleton's record label. The label, in similar fashion, has put out albums for X-rated while he was awaiting trial and eventually convicted of murder. Now, she claimed, again, that they put him up to doing some depraved acts. The suit charged that the label had provided Singleton with drugs to encourage him to act out in an extreme violent manner so as to make him more marketable as a gangster rap artist. Part of what makes a gangster rap artist marketable is the fact that the artist is a current ongoing participant in violent gang activities, the lawsuit said. So it's interesting that the victim's mother is sympathizing with Big Lurch, even though he killed her daughter. And she's basically saying that he was set up. She's not denying that he committed the murder, but she's saying that he was set up to commit it from the record company. Also, with this Saturn on his moon, he thought the world was ending. That Saturn conjoined to the moon. He thought he had to kill the devil. So he projected the devil onto Tynesha, his victim. But again, I'm wondering if it was his friend, Tynesha's boyfriend, that got into his head and said, yo, I got to kill this bitch. She's the devil or whatever like that. And then Big Lurch was like, either like, I'll do it, or he put him up to do it, or he helped. So I don't think this friend, Tynesha's boyfriend, is totally innocent in this, but he was never prosecuted. Transiting Saturn opposing his Neptune. This can manifest as a hard sacrifice, being forced to capitulate or give in, being trapped, an embarrassing or humiliating situation, a devastating loss, being or feeling guilty, checking out, like losing it, like you're not there no more. Having to come to terms with an addiction. Transiting Saturn, opposition Neptune, again, being threatened with jail time, getting by on less sleep, insomnia. So when him, with him being on PCP, I wouldn't be surprised if he was going through insomnia, not sleeping. He was probably up all night. He did go to that party. The end of a grace period. Time to face the music. Again, some of these bullet points are taken from my book that I'm writing on transits. A need to face a fear, depression, feeling hopeless, paranoia sets in. A reality check. Transiting Neptune in Aquarius, trine Pluto in Libra. A lot of times positive Neptune transits can represent parties. So he was partying with his friends the night before the murder. But this is also him helping a friend commit a crime, in this case, murder. So again, I wouldn't be surprised if it was Tynesha's boyfriend that wanted her murdered and Big Lurch carried it out or he helped. A sacrifice that calls for murder. So again, I feel like this was a sacrifice not for Big Lurch benefit, but for someone else's. Getting high on PCP with friends makes it easy for the demon to take over. Visions, hallucinations made it easy to justify depravity. Friend becomes his defense attorney, or I think it was the record guy, but that's like his associate. And Neptune being in Aquarius, Aquarius deals with friendships, associates, acquaintances. Neptune deals with music, but also drugs. So that's the story on Big Lurch. Let me know what you think in the comments section. Again, a very strange story, especially considering the fact that PCP was found in Tynesha's system and it was said that she didn't smoke PCP. And like you saw in the video, she has so much PCP in her system that she couldn't possibly smoke that much. So I think that's very strange. And I think it's telling that, you know, something more was going on to this story. But as I showed you, Big Lurch definitely played a role in terms of the psychosis that he was going through. And again, I believe he was already dealing with some mental health issues with that moon opposition Neptune. So this is the conclusion of part 1, the rapper edition of my Demonic and Depraved series. If you would like a reading, you could go to my website. My website is listed in the description section. And I'll be back with another story of a demonic and depraved rapper very soon. So stay tuned. Peace.